Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Vaadin webinar. This has been quite a busy month for me. This is actually the third webinar for this month already, and today's topic is about Spring and Vaadin. So we are talking here with Stéphane Nicoll from Pivotal about Spring, and unlike the webinar 2 weeks ago, which we did with Peter Holmström when we talked about Spring as well, so we had a dependency injection webinar then, we actually promised a bit about the dependency injection in the description of this webinar, but we will kind of pass that part because we already did that in this month. So we'll mostly be talking about Spring Boot and all the different kind of...
The nice feature that Spring Boot
brings. Yeah, and all the things that all the Spring platform brings. So lots of modules in Spring, and you can use quite many of those with Vaadin as well.
And we have nice demos today.
Yeah, and no slides today, so we will just be showing some couple of examples, and then we have lots of questions, and probably not gonna go through all of them today. So, but you can still add them to the forum, and we can answer them today or tomorrow after the webinar. And yep. So, Stéphane, what do you do actually at Pivotal?
Working on the Spring Boot team and the Spring Framework team.
Yeah, so it's a very surprised that we are talking a lot about Spring Boot today.
Totally surprising, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm also working on a project called start.spring.io. We'll see that today.
We'll be using that as well.
So it allows you to quick start a new project very easily using Spring Boot and all the technologies that Spring Boot supports. So well.
Yeah, and we have actually met at least once before you actually joined Pivotal, and you have been actually making some web UIs in the past as well.
Yes, I used to be a customer. We used to use Vaadin indeed, and I had a training here in Turku, like I think 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah, how did it go with Vaadin, with web UIs?
Well, yeah, well, you know, I'm not really. I'm more of a backend guy. I'm totally unable to write a user interface. If you will see start.spring.io, you'll see I haven't written a single line of this. It's my colleague Brian Clausel mostly working on that.
Yeah.
But Vaadin, with Vaadin, I was able to write quite good looking stuff.
Yeah, that's the kind of true power of Vaadin. You have the same Java API that you are using also in the backend.
Right.
With Spring or whatever Java technologies, then you can use the same skills with Vaadin. And actually you can use many of those Spring features as well, which come from the Spring core, like we discussed in the webinar with Peter Holmström a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, about today's webinar, we have actually had a couple of Spring webinars already here in the Vaadin studios, and then we actually had one webinar before we even had an official Vaadin Spring integration library.
Something that needs to be said is that now the Spring support is officially within the Vaadin code base.
Yeah, and I think that kind of helps a lot of Vaadin developers nowadays, because there is more fine-grained support, so there are no collisions in certain services, for example.
That and also the fact that the Spring team and the Vaadin team have worked together on this.
Yeah.
So I spend a lot of time with you guys working on this. So.
Most of the features make sense to use together, and they work together very well. So the first webinar, that was actually just after the launch of Spring Boot, maybe like 3 years ago. We had that with Joslong, and then we actually started working on the official Spring add-on, because until that people had been, there was actually a couple of community contributed add-ons with Vaadin, and then people were using also Vaadin without any add-ons or integration libraries. You could do that manually as well, like do the integration for each and every project, and you didn't need to get that much, but now with the integrations, everything is just much easier.
And we'll see how easy it is with the first demo actually.
Yeah, and in the beginning we will start with the start.spring.io, so we will see how to get started with Vaadin application and see all the basic stuff there, but then we will jump into more complex CRUD example, and that has actually been one of my example projects, but we have been playing around with it a bit, and now with also kind of couple of new tricks that you can use there, and there is actually a couple of very nice new productivity tips, especially for me. But I guess that many of the audience who are more experienced with Spring even than I am, they might actually find some very useful.
I think so. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, and also in the questions section, we will actually we will be discussing about REST a bit. Maybe there was actually multiple multiple questions about using REST with Spring-based Vaadin applications, maybe because of the last week's webinar that we had with Salesforce about using REST.
Yeah.
And many people are basing their application on Spring, so now they naturally had the question that how to do it in Spring, and actually Stéphane did the example for me this morning.
This morning? Well,
yeah.
It's not that hard.
I think I actually promised during the webinar last week that I will make a Spring example as well to how to
there.
use.
What are you
REST
complaining?
template.
It's there.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. You did my job. Yeah. All right. Shall we get started?
Yeah. Let's do that.
Start.spring.io. So this is the service that you have been maintaining?
Yeah, so it's very, very simple service. The idea of this service is to help you to bootstrap a new project.
Yeah.
So you select the build system that you want to use.
I was using Cradle last week, but I'm willing to go with Maven this week.
Yes, please. Then the default Spring Boot version.
Usually the defaults are fine.
The default is the latest stable anyway. But if you want to test a new feature, or if you want to test, for instance, something related to Spring from a file, you can
the snapshot.
Yeah, the snapshot one, and it will auto-configure the repository for you and everything.
Awesome.
Then on the left-hand side, you have some basic metadata about your project, but we don't need to change that.
Yeah.
And on the right-hand side, you have a search field where you can shop for dependencies. So you can start typing something you'd like to integrate with and see what happens.
Vaadin is
Obviously.
And then let's actually add all the things that we will play today.
Yeah, so today what we are going to do on top of this demo, we are going to access a database. So you need probably JPA.
JPA?
Yeah.
So that's Spring Data JPA?
Yes, you need a database on
H2. That's what I always use in my demos because it's very easy.
Me too.
And then
during the demo, we'll showcase the actuator, which is a feature in Spring Boot that brings DevOps feature and administrative features to your app.
Yeah.
And we also showcase DevTools today.
Yeah.
So DevTools, as you will see, adding that to your project will add nice development-specific utilities when you run your app locally. So you can click on Generate Project right now. You'll get a zip file, and then you can extract that zip file. It's an empty project with all the setup done for you, and you can import that into your IDE.
Yeah. So I will just go there and well.
Let's not do that because
You had another idea.
Yeah,
so
a better way.
I actually installed this plugin here. So if you go here, and I have it installed already here. So Spring Boot plugin for NetBeans, and there is one for IntelliJ. That's probably the most advanced one.
And there is one for
well.
I'm an IntelliJ fan, so I'm.
You have the SDS bundle, which is based on Eclipse, but
which is definitely
quite many of you actually use IntelliJ.
It's a matter of choice, really, and STS also has great support. So. Everything we are going to show you today, as far as IDE support, if you don't use NetBeans, you'll see that we'll switch to IntelliJ IDE later. If you use Eclipse, keep in mind that you'll have those features as well. Yeah. So one of the features we want to show you is how you can bootstrap a new project right from your IDE. So with Spring Boot, you can do that because there is an integration with start.spring.io.
Yeah. So this basic Spring Boot project, this is just a static project.
I guess. I don't know NetBeans, but I guess. And this one is actually allows you to connect to the same service, but right from your IDE. You'll see the same options.
Yeah. And
then we are going to just pick that one. By the way, if you want to bootstrap a project with Vaadin, there is no need to add the web dependency or any other dependency. If you want really basic web application, only Vaadin is enough.
Vaadin is enough, so that kind of inherits all the servlet stuff and all the things that's required. So this is the project that was created.
Yeah, we already have
files.
We already have the project.
Actually 4 files. So we actually have demo.
We have our main class, so it's the entry point to start our application. We have a test, so you can just start writing your test right away. An empty configuration file for now, and the build script.
Yeah, this is kind of the main thing here that you get. So you have a fully configured build for your application,
and you can
and all the dependencies that you chose. And in this case, we only had Vaadin.
Sure.
Vaadin starter here.
And all the dependency management will be configured for you. So
this is something that I like in Spring Boot project because you have had so much effort on cleaning up the build scripts so that you don't have this long maven bomb description or anything. So
yeah. So the concept of starter, you'll see if you look at we will see that in more examples later. But
yeah, you can bring in all the detail, all
the basic detail, what you need to basically get started. And if you need to have more features, then you can add more dependencies if necessary. But you really get a getting started experience that allows you to write your code right away. So the only thing that we have to do now is write the code and write a basic UI.
Let's create my UI class, the original name. And now we need to add one annotation, Spring UI.
Spring UI 2.
So this comes from the Vaadin Spring integration library. And it actually kind of instructs Spring context
to register it, and the auto configuration of Vaadin in Spring Boot will do the rest.
But otherwise, this is just a normal Vaadin UI class, so the entry point to Vaadin applications, and you need the init method. And let's put some really interesting content, like set.
Hello guys. I don't know.
Set content.
Hello everyone.
New label.
So what we are showing right now is it's not really about Vaadin and what Vaadin can do, but more about what Spring Boot how Spring Boot can help you as far as the infrastructure is concerned.
One annotation that I always want to add there, it's not a necessity, but
the theme.
So this is the new Valo theme, and it's much better. And you can, in a real life project, you probably want to kind of customize it as well, so that it looks more like your company's.
But in Vaadin 8 it will be the default, right?
Yeah, the Valo will be the default there.
Okay, that's it.
Then run it. I can just go to here in the IDE and run the file, so it picks up the main method.
It's starting a main method, right? Which is a bit weird since it's a web application. So usually you would generate a raw file, then you will have some servlet container on the side, and you would deploy that into your servlet container, and you can get working. Yeah. With Spring Boot, it's much easier. You just start a main class, and here you go. You have your Vaadin app running.
And the good thing about this is that this is now Spring Managed Bean.
So everything you can do with Spring, you can do that in that UI right away. So one thing you could do is use whatever logic you have, create a service for it. And as you can see, we are in the process of creating a very complex service.
Resource.
It's not, but service.
Service.
Or component.
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter. So then you can add whatever business logic you want, and you'll see that we'll be able to easily inject our service into the Vaadin UI and use it. So again, keep in mind, if you use Spring Framework to write your business logic, you'll see that it's very, very easy to consume that within your Vaadin application with that setup.
And the service is from stereotype, and then we need to auto-wire it.
Yeah, so you basically create... Oh, are you going to do the field injection thing again?
I think...
Don't do that, it's
okay, let's not do that.
Create a field. In a constructor, you'll feel much better after.
My service...
Sync, if that's what you call it.
And
no. Don't do that.
Okay, let's make it
let's
private and fine now.
Yes.
Okay, so now you can build like a real test for it.
Yes.
And
give it a name.
Yes. Service, and then create a constructor.
Right.
And now I need to add auto-wire here.
You used to have to do that, but now you don't have anymore because since you only have so auto-wire is something to tell the container when you create that bean for me. Please make sure that there is a bean of type my service and inject that for me from the context. So the service that Matti just defined in the other class will be injected into your UI. And you set @AutoWire to make sure that the container knows that the constructor it has to use. In the latest release, you don't have to do that if you only have one constructor, which is mostly the usual case. So you can just remove that thing.
So let's remove that.
And start again. And this is actually calling a Spring Bean now. And as you can see, there's not a lot of effort in doing so.
All right, now we have the application running, and if you reload it, Wow.
Why?
Please.
What's the error? Oh, it's not static.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, I should have also done like a separate.
It is
public static file. Public.
Then I don't get it. Can we show the stack trace again, quickly? Just not found.
Yeah, for some reason it didn't maybe build it properly.
I can see that, yeah.
Build?
You sure you still want to use NetBeans?
Not anymore. Okay. And we could also use the Maven plugin to launch the main class here.
Yeah. Or you can generate a jar file. There's plenty of options for you to start your Spring Boot application. Okay. So that's it. That was a build glitch issue.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's funny, but maybe we can do something a bit more complex.
So let's open this one application that we have been playing on. What did I do? I actually closed. Reset my windows, please. So this is like a full CRUD application. So we have a real database, or we don't have that real database at this point. So it's H2, but it's like a real relational application, and the main method is the same.
Yeah, so it's very easy. Again, you just have an entry point, a Spring Boot application that tells Spring Boot to do its thing, and we have a JPA entity and a form. Okay, maybe let's see the UI.
Yeah. Okay, but we have an exception.
Oh, do we?
Yeah. So I actually did this on purpose, so I left the old application running there. So this is actually one new feature that you have in Spring Boot
1.4. Yeah. So if the application doesn't start, if your process doesn't start, it happens quite often.
Yeah.
And usually with Java and Spring and Java in general, what you get is a gigantic stack trace. That you have to
like we had in the past. Yeah. And this is actually what we discussed in the dependency injection webinar, like past. And it's maybe the hardest part with dependency injection, that to find out what's actually wrong when something is wrong. So the stack traces are long, and it's pretty hard to find the
You need to go really on the right to find out what happened.
Find out the solution for that. So there is kind of a helper for the most common mistakes.
That's it. Yeah. So there is two things. There is an open SPI. So there is an interface called Failure Analyzer that you can implement. And when you do and you register it, when there is an exception, the application doesn't start. We will invoke them to see if they can handle the issue, and if they do, they will give you a very precise message, because they will actually look at the exception and try to extract information, contextual information out of it, and generate a message.
Yeah. So now it was pretty easy to see it, because it gave me the instruction to stop the other server and try again. And now if we go here and reload, we should have this like JPA application up and running. So we have filtering for Vladimir. Seems to be there at least, and then we can edit the files, simple form, we can add new ones, we can delete stuff, and like a full CRUD application. And this is what we'll be discussing a bit, how this was built, this example, and then we'll build on it for some more. So let's go first through what we have here at this point.
So the backend maybe first?
Yeah, so there is only one table in this and one entity class in this case, but this is just a simple JPA entity.
So nothing special about it, and you'll see that if you need to use that with Spring Boot, there is pretty much nothing you need to do, because we have some
validators here, and the Vaadin UI can actually automatically take care or use those. And we have a couple of different properties that we have here. We already saw them in the actual UI, so let's go to this repository. So this is from Spring Data. That's maybe one of my favorite features in Spring, or among like all Spring projects. So this makes it really nice to make like simple database application. You don't need to write all those queries.
Yes.
And even if the IDEs have like pretty good helper methods for writing queries, even SQL or JPQL, you still make pretty easily mistakes there. And with this way, it's much more easier. And this is not all that we have there. So you can the JPA repository and the paging and sorting repositories and the auto superclasses, they contain lots of like basic methods like find all, save, delete, and
so you're very productive, and it's also quite standardized. Also, you can see here that we have custom queries, and the query to run is actually deduced from the method signature.
Yeah. So I don't need to implement any queries with this. Yeah. So
find by name like ignore case is going to do the search that we've just showcased. Which means that you don't need to take care of the case if it's uppercase or not. It will match.
So this is actually the method that was used there when I saw the filtering.
So let's maybe see that in the UI then.
Yeah. So this is the kind of the entry point, the main UI class here that we have, and here we are actually now injecting this repository, and then we are auto-wiring person form, which is like another Vaadin component where we edit those, and then we inject also event bus. So this is one of the kind of relics from the project that Josh Long and Peter Homster did originally when they started creating this official add-on, and this is actually still in a very heavy use, for example, in our internal project that we do to our customers. So this is very handy tool to kind of decoupling these Vaadin UI components using like Spring mechanisms.
With the UI scope in this case.
So Spring itself, it has this event bus as well, but it's kind of a global, and this kind of gives you like UI level or view level event buses. So
for the current UI.
And actually we can remove this auto-wire now.
Oh yeah. See, let's go to right.
Yeah, and let's maybe check out the person repository or person form first. We can then see how this event bus works here. So this is pretty basic form. It's extending from my add-on just to kind of give all the basics for forms like save and cancel button and validation and all that configured automatically. So we practically just define the fields that we have for the entity, and then we add a couple of handlers. So we have save handler. When user actually saves something, then we go to the repository.
And that method you didn't implement either. It's provided automatically.
Yeah, it's the default method from the repository. We can remove that auto-wired as well. And after we have saved it, we go to this event bus and publish one event. We can pass any object here as a parameter, but I just created a special person modified event. So in a real life application, in a larger application, kind of to really take the advantage of this decoupling, you could probably have another UI component, not just the main UI class, which could be listening to the same events. So if you have maybe like a listing, and maybe I like often like all map things, like geographical maps, and you could have a map at the same time somewhere visible, and you could maybe update that as well when somebody saves the actual pocho. And that's it pretty much. And this has kind of no references to the main UI now.
And the main UI is actually listening to that event?
Yeah. So in the main UI's init method, we actually just subscribe to the event bus. And here I have actually implemented it here at this level. So we are having event bus listener with the person modified event, and it's here on event.
So we refresh the table and close the pop-up.
So we probably have the pop-up open when we're editing, and we will close that and also refresh the entities. And this is actually one other kind of interesting part of this application. It kind of shows how to do the integration with Spring Data, or in a real life application you would probably have some kind of a service class there in front of the repository, because you don't necessarily want to expose everything from the Spring Data to the UI layer. So you might be kind of want to limit the scope that the UI layer sees, or
so the creation of the filter and everything would go in the service.
Yeah, exactly. Like this kind of stuff would go to the service, and
so we can see
you could also use DTOs, maybe not raw entities. Yeah.
So we can see we just set the rows with the result from the repository, and that's about it.
Yeah. So this is also from the Vaadin add-on, but this is the same thing that you will be using in next Vaadin version, Vaadin version 8. There we will be kind of, you must be knowing containers and items.
Yes, I've implemented a few of those.
Yeah, so that's kind of ruined now. No, not really. Actually, you can still use that in Vaadin 8, but you will have like a new much more handier methods where you can just pass in the list of whatever objects you have and put that to the table or grid. And that's pretty much it. And this actually very like even simpler methods that you can hear. And also it has a full lazy loading example. So if you want to kind of, this one is a bit bad if you have a huge database because it will load all the data from the database to the JVM memory. So that's usually not a problem, but if you have lots of users or really a lot of data, then you don't want to do that. But you want to do the lazy loading solution here instead. But no need to use it in this demo.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So simple example. I think do we have anything else from this at this point?
No, I think maybe we can show now how we can use Spring Boot in this app, and we can add feature. Well, use Spring Boot feature for one, and see how we can use Spring Boot a bit more than what we have right now.
Yeah, and how you can make like Spring developers even more productive with some tools like the developer tools.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see the same application from your computer now.
Yes. So I have it here. So I guess it's running already. It's the same thing basically, right?
Yeah.
Nothing new. And the first thing I would like to do is to add a new dependency to the project. So let me do that right here. So I'm going to add a new dependency called DevTools. We already quickly mentioned that initially.
Yeah. So what is there in DevTools?
So it's a dependency. When Spring Boot will detect it, it will enable some kind of development utility for you.
Yeah.
So if you run the application in your IDE locally, you'll get extra feature out of the box.
Yeah. So you shouldn't enable this for production, but during the development time.
Yes, but anyway, in production, we have a way, because the way the application is started, we detect that, and DevTools won't be enabled in that case, even if it's on the class path.
Yeah.
So let me restart the app just to make sure that this is active. And one of the things that we would like to do is we have a database in memory, right? And we would like to see what's going on in the database.
Yeah, so if we edit some row, for example, in this database, does it really go back to all the way back to the database?
And make sure that it actually does what it's supposed to do. So one thing that DevTools will do, it will automatically expose the H2 console.
Yeah, I have actually done this manually because I didn't know about this feature.
Well, I used to have a live template in my IDE just to autocomplete the code, and I just removed it this morning because now it's automatic. It doesn't used to be that way. Yeah. So I can now actually look at my table, right? Very easy.
Yeah.
But there is much more that we can do, and one thing that we can do is we can use live reload. So live reload is actually a feature that allows a server to send command to your browser, basically. So you have a live reload server running on your machine. Then you can use the live reload free client. So you can install that for free. The client is free. And basically the server can send command to your browser. So it can, for instance, refresh the browser for you, which allows you to be much more productive. Yeah. When we use DevTools, a very basic live reload server will be started for you automatically so that you can connect. So now I'm connected to my Spring Boot application, basically. And we can see we have here some kind of data here, right? Some text. Let me change that text. So change some code. Let's put awesome here, right?
Yeah, because it's awesome.
Let's put just that and see what happens if I do.
Yeah, so no hands and no reload.
Yeah, I did that on purpose, right? Just that I don't keep like refreshing. But there's two things really that happened. One is DevTools detected that I changed some code. Yeah. So it restarted the application, but it didn't restart the full process. It just restarted the tiny bits that it made.
It was much faster than if you would start it before, like from the scratch, because there would be hibernate, loading and loading and loading, and then it would be up. But so it was now like a second.
So the application context will restart, but since the cache of the virtual machine have not been cleared, so all the things that all the thing that the VM has optimized on startup is still there. Yeah. So the startup is quite fast indeed. And the second thing that it will do at the end, so once the application has fully restarted, it will send a command to the browser to say refresh. Yeah. So you change some code, you go back there, and it's there.
Yeah, like a much shorter cycle with it. Develop, see what you get. Yeah.
So one thing you could also do is to add DevOps and management feature to your application, and to do that, you'll add a new starter, which is called actuator. Okay. Yeah. So I'm just adding a dependency, right? I'm not doing anything else. And what happens is Spring Boot will detect that
even the class path changes.
New code are available. So maybe we need to do something about that, since I don't write any configuration.
Yeah. So in this sense, this is actually much better than, for example, JRebel alone, because it cannot never kind of detect the new class path changes.
Right. So in this case, I have a new endpoint, a set of new endpoints that will be exposed for me. So for instance, I can see the configuration of my application. So if I go right here, I can see, we haven't seen it yet, but I have a configuration file with 2 keys. So let's have a look right now to it. This is the current configuration of this app. I'm asking Hibernate to create the schema for me. And I'm also asking to log any SQL statement that are being made, right? This is the thing that we see here.
Yeah, but that's not very good in production, so if you want to kind of...
We will change that in a minute. And this is what Spring Boot does, and that's why I wanted to show you this now, because it will automatically set that value to true, which will enable the H2 console. There is plenty of other endpoints that you can use. So for instance, you can use trace to look at the incoming request on your server to check the request header and the response headers. You could look at metrics, so you could actually get some information about your running application. You can also see if your data source is currently in use and how many connections are being used. You can see if your application is healthy. Is it okay? Is the services that are within this application, are they up to date? Are they working properly? So in this case, we make sure that the database is up. You can add more to this list very easily.
Yeah.
But as you said, we have a problem. Is Hibernate is creating the schema for us. We are using an in-memory database, so well, maybe we could do better than that.
Yeah, let's go production with this application.
So let's go production. So to go production, the first thing you need to do is to manage the schema yourself, right?
Yeah.
And there you have many options to do it, and there are tools actually that allows you to upgrade and create the schema on startup and make sure that it's always consistent. There's 2 tools that you can use. One which is called Flyway, and the other one is called Liquibase.
Liquibase, yeah.
I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you how to do it with Flyway. But if you want to use Liquibase, we also have support for that. So first, let me add Flyway as a dependency. I have a new dependency, so Spring Boot will do something extra for me. The way it works is you are going to create your migration script in a db.migration entry in the class path. So you'll basically write all the delta of your script. So you'll start with a certain script, then you'll need to update the schema, or maybe insert more data, or maybe remove a column because the code has changed, doesn't need that column anymore. For each of those steps, you'll create a file, and Flyway or Liquibase will read that, and depending on the current state of your database, it will upgrade the database for you. So let's create an initial database. So I'm creating V1, and I'm going to give it a description. So I'm going to say initial schema, but you can really write whatever you want there.
Yeah.
And well, I need to create my database, right?
Yeah.
So I have that prepared because SQL.
Because of time.
SQL, I don't know SQL, so if I had to write that myself, that would be a total mess. So this is a feature that you are currently using to initialize the database.
This is also like a Spring Boot feature, but
yes. So let's move that here so that we have our data, so we can actually delete that file. Yeah. And we have one more thing that we need to do, very important, is to now tell Hibernate, please don't create the schema, because otherwise Flyway will create it, the Hibernate will try to create it, and that obviously won't work.
Yes, of course.
So let's say instead of create, let's say none.
Yeah, the only safe option that you can have in production, yes.
Right. So let me start that again. Well, every time we start, the in-memory database goes away, of course. So we'll see what happens. So again, I haven't written any kind of configuration file, nothing. I'm just using the default behavior. You can see that Flyway here has been started automatically. It has found that we are using H2 in memory. So it needs to create the schema. It has created it. So let's have a look to our app to see if it's still working. It is. And just to show you actually how it works, you can see that there is an extra table now.
Yeah, so there's a new table now.
And that table is the magic behind Flyway. It's basically storing the current version of your schema in the database itself, and it reads that metadata file on startup, that table on startup, and it looks at the schema it has, and if there is something to do, it will do it for you. Okay, so we manage our schema, but we are still working with an in-memory database.
Yeah, so I think we should get some kind of a real database.
So
or H2 is actually pretty good in real life as well.
It is. Yeah. I like it a lot, but probably if you are at a customer, probably they're going to use the big
multiple applications connecting to the same database. That probably not that good solution.
So this is JDBC, this is JPA, right? And Spring supports many database vendors. There's really nothing specific about that. So if you are using DB2, Oracle, SQL Server,
that was actually one of the questions that was raised before the webinars. That what databases can you use, and with Spring Data you can use really many.
Yeah, pretty much anything.
And if you use like raw JDBC template, so without JPA, then you
can... Or Joke, if you want, you can also use Joke.
So then it's practically any database that you can use.
Right, so anything that Hibernate supports, really, you can use it.
Yeah.
So let's use MySQL for the sake of this demo. I don't need that, and I don't need to compile against it. It's only going to be used at runtime. So I'm adding a new jar. So you may guess that maybe Spring Boot is going to do something about it. Well, it won't, because there is nothing that we can decide. So we can't say, okay, the MySQL driver is present, so maybe that means you want to connect to MySQL, but we don't know where, we don't know the username, we don't know the passwords, we know nothing. Yeah. So we need to tell it a bit more about it. So if we start this application again, even though the MySQL driver is here, we'll still run with H2.
Yeah.
But I want to have the ability to switch from H2 because it's very convenient.
Yeah, during the development you maybe still want to use H2.
And maybe switch to an actual persistent database, or let's say a different database for testing or for production or whatever. So what I'm going to do here is to show you a different feature of Spring Boot, which is profile management. So I'm going to create a new file here. I'm going to call it application. You've seen that the main configuration file is called application. I'm going to call it application-local, and local will be the name of a profile. So I'm going to explain what that means in practice. So this is a new file. So I need to basically tell Spring Boot to connect to a different database. So let's see. I'm going to say, I'm going to provide a URL of the database. So I'm going to say MySQL localhost. Let me show you that now. I have a Vaadin database right here.
Yeah, but it's still empty.
It's empty, so there is nothing in this database for now. Okay. I need to give the credentials. That's Vaadin, I think, and the password, and that's secret. So you can access my database now, right?
Yeah.
Well,
I like it.
Do that. And so the thing with the profile is you can decide to enable it at some point, and it will use that file. But if you don't, it will just read the default configuration, right? So if I start again, if I start the application right now, nothing will happen. But let me close that first. But if I'm cloning this configuration here, this is IntelliJ, but you can also find that in other solutions. The key is active profile here. I'm going to say enable the local profile. So when we do that, instead of just reading this file, it will also read the local configuration file and this one.
Yeah, and it will merge those properties together.
It will merge them, so it will override anything. So one thing we could do is we've instruct here Hibernate to show SQL queries, as we've seen. What we can do now is we can say false. Yeah, so that will change the value from the default.
So if you develop, then it's showing the queries, and now if you go with the local profile, then it doesn't.
But what's really important here is it's not H2 in memory anymore. It's a different database, and we have our script. So we don't need to bother about the schema anymore, because the schema will be created for us. We just need to provide it, and that's it. You can see I have some warnings because I have SSL, which is the default, and it's complaining about that. So if I go here and I refresh, then I can see that I have exactly the same thing as before.
Yeah.
And
but now
the app is running. And by the way, if I'm going, remember when we were on the health endpoint, you could see that the database was up and it was H2.
Yeah.
So if I go here and I'm asking, you'll see that it's MySQL, as you would expect. Okay, so we are managing the database ourselves. We have shown some nice thing that Spring can do for a Vaadin app. But maybe what would be nice now is to show a complete feature. Let's try to implement a feature from, let's say, from beginning to end. And what we can do is we could add a new field. So if I'm creating a person, I have those 4 fields. Let's say that we add an extra one. And what that means is we need to change the schema, we need to change the UI, and we need to make sure that...
really like releasing a new version of the application and publishing that.
So we're basically touching the both layers that are currently exposed. So let's do that. First thing to do is I need to upgrade my JPA entity. I'm going to, let's create a collect switch, whatever that means, right?
Yeah.
And we need to create getters and setters for that. That's the first thing.
And then we need to do the same for the form.
We need something, and actually the project already uses a nice add-on.
Switch
add-on.
Yeah, that's pretty much a checkbox, but with like a more touch-optimized UI.
So let's create it and give it a caption. New colleague.
Switch.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the thing I wanted to do. And then we need to add that to the layout, so that it actually shows. And it will bind properly to our object automatically.
Yeah, it will do the name-based binding here. You could of course use an annotation here, but most of them...
That one is easy enough, right?
Yeah.
But if we try to do that, that won't work because we need to add this extra field in our database. If we look at the structure of the database here, we see that we have those fields. We don't have the colleague field.
Exactly.
So this is how you can use Flyway or Liquibase to actually upgrade and improve your schema transparently.
Yeah.
Think about it. You won't have to run that script on your local database anymore. You just store that into your repository version control, and then anybody can update, run, and
automatically when you push the new file to the server, then it will do the upgrade.
Yes, and it will contain the change set will contain everything you need to change. So we need a new version. We were at version 1. It's not a major change, so let's call that version 1.1. And let's say
2 underscores and some comment.
Yeah, the 2 underscore is to separate the version from the description. So let's say add colleague switch or whatever you'd like to say. And alter table person add colleague boolean.
I'm not sure if it's right, but let's hope. This is SQL again. This is difficult.
I think that should be okay. Yeah. So the next step here, what I want to show you is DevTools again. Remember, if you change code, DevTools will know about that and refresh your application. So what I'm going to do now is I'm not going to restart the app. I'm just going to build. Yeah. Build and see what happens. So, okay, I have that switch. Let's create some random person. I'm just going to use that switch. Save. Yeah. If I search for foo, then it's there. Right. And if I need to refresh tables there, and I have my new
the new field
is there, and it has the value there. Well, you can't see the field because we're actually in front of it, but this is it.
Yeah. So that was actually really
deep dive into how Spring Boot can help you, and so the main story, what I like to show with those demos is you stay in the IDE all the time, so you're very productive because you don't have to switch to a different tool.
Yeah.
You write everything in the IDE, the IDE will figure out things for you, and you can basically switch to the browser and see the result.
You write most of the stuff in Java, like Vaadin as well. Yeah. That's what I like most in Spring stuff, that you like emphasis so much Java these days, especially now that you have practically nobody uses anymore these XML configurations. So
if you don't use that, you don't have to use that. Yeah. Spring Boot has no. Well, if you still want to do it, you can, but you don't have to.
Yeah. We have wasted 45 minutes of our listeners' precious time, so maybe it's time to go to the questions. Yes. We had actually lots of questions, and I hope there is actually more of those still. And we will probably not have time to answer all of those, but we will answer them in the forum then after the webinar if you don't have time now.
Yeah.
We will spend 15 more minutes here, but that's the hard limit for us, that 1 hour. And there was actually a couple of questions that were repeated by multiple persons. The first one was REST. So how are you using REST? And as I said already, that we actually built a new example how to use REST template with Vaadin application. So this kind of explains how you can, if you have a Spring-based Vaadin application, how you can access REST services. So pretty much same stuff that we did last week's webinar, but using like a Spring stack here.
So this is a very, very basic example, right? It's nothing fancy. This is something that indeed we built in the morning for this webinar. So this is a simple app that shows you the latest commit of a certain GitHub project.
Yeah, surprise, it's Vaadin Spring.
Yeah, well, if you want, we can do that. And see what start.spring.io looks like. And this is what, these are the commits of start.spring.io.
Surprising committer there.
Yeah, well, oops. And on each commit you have access to the SHA, and you can basically link to the actual commit.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah. So let's see how that was built.
Let's see the code. As you'll see, the code is really quite simple. Remember the my service that we've created initially, the very simple one. Well, there is no much more to do. All you have to focus now is to create the actual client using REST template.
Yeah. So instead of going to database, now we are going to different server, get the data there, map it to Java beans, and then bind those Java beans.
And just bind those to the list, to the table. Yeah. So we have a GitHub client here. It's a service, so it's basically a Spring service.
Yeah. So one of these per application.
Then we use a new feature in Spring Boot 1.4, which is REST template builder. It will be auto-configured for you, so you can inject it in your own project. I'm going to create a REST template. It's an object that allows you to make HTTP calls, and it has a converter infrastructure to, like you said, convert the JSON to a POJO. So this is the core of the call here. I'm calling the GitHub public API. So again, if you have an API, you need to read the documentation, how it works, etc., and you'll figure that out.
And you probably want to make one maybe like manual request there, or get the response and do the reverse engineering for the domain object.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm using Exchange here, where I'm basically providing the URI, so the HTTP address. And I'm going to say I want to commit array of object, because
so this commit is the reverse engineer domain.
Yes. Yeah. So commit, I basically get an array of commit, an array of JSON object. So this is what I get, and how the mapping works is, if you look at commit, it's a simple POJO, and it has this Jackson feature called JSON deserialize, where you can provide a deserializer. So I'm giving you the full story here regarding deserialization. If you don't want to change the JSON object, the JSON output, if it's pretty much the same as your POJO, it will work transparently.
Then you don't need to make any mappings that present those.
But in this case,
and,
But in this case, I want to get value that are in nested object, and I just want to have something quite simple. So this is basically calling the Jackson API, so you can look at the JSON object and extract value, and basically create the commit. And that's about it. And if you call that method with the organization and the project, which is what we have in those two fields, you'll get a list of commit. Then, as usual, nothing surprising. We have a main UI with a table and two fields, and we basically set the content of those fields.
Yeah.
Not to spend too much time on this, but if you want to have a look to the code, this is where you can go.
Yeah. That was one of the most common questions as well. Are the examples in GitHub? Yes, we will post the links to this and also to the.
And the other one is here.
Yeah, we can post those to the forum. Then it's easier to access those, so no need to kind of find out that small text from the.
You can zoom.
Yeah.
And if you go there, you'll see that there is a README with more information because there are more features, more Spring Boot related features.
That was actually like caching that was pretty easy to set up as well. And then you had this configuration properties.
Yes, because GitHub has this rate limiting API. You can't invoke anonymously those services more than 60 times an hour, which is not a lot. Yeah. But you can very easily create a token once you have a GitHub account, and when you do, the limit is 5,000, which is much more.
And now we have this configuration
to give the token because you need to give the token.
Then you can actually get some kind of nice autocomplete for this custom property. You could actually probably show that.
I can show you that right now. Yeah, I think it's quite something. Okay, let me check what the name was. Okay, demo.vaadin.rest. This is it.
So all you needed was just one class. So in addition to getting this one REST service, you can actually see 3 different Spring Boot demos in this one project.
More demo there. So have a look.
Yeah. Okay. Then we could go to next question, and next question was, or the next most common question, actually 3 times asked, different angles between the questions, but all were like related to Spring security,
of course,
and how you use Spring security with Vaadin. And actually, I could show you a couple of blog posts that we have written during the Spring. About Spring, of course. Yeah,
that's a nice joke.
I just had to do it. So one of our architects who is doing lots of actual project deliverables here in Vaadin, he has been using Spring security a lot in his applications that of course use Vaadin as well, and he actually wrote about 2 different approaches how you can integrate Spring security with Vaadin application with the Vaadin Spring add-on today. And one way is to use is pretty much the same way how you use it with, for example, with Spring and Vaadin. So you just rely on those filters, servlet filters, and the servlet filter will each time set the security credentials for the request. It's like active during the request, and then you can just use it, and that automatically kind of goes all the way if you use some role-based checks for in service object, for example, or in.
So the goal and the fact that the 2 teams are working together on the integration is to make sure that if you use Vaadin, everything you use to Spring will work transparently, and the other way around. So we will try to make sure that those 2 are working great together, and that's one example of those. That thing.
And this kind of works out of the box. There are a couple of places where we could actually make this integration a bit easier, and we are considering to add these features at some point to next Vaadin Spring version. But practically, after we made these articles, and then
when you write an article,
maybe we are a bit more hurry with our Vaadin 8 version at the moment, but we hope to get this out as well. Actually, there is one new version coming out about Vaadin Spring, and we'll tackle that in next questions actually, so what we are actually planning to release there. And then there was actually one other hybrid approach about Spring security. So there is one limitation in those filter-based thingy, or a couple of small limitations, and the most major one is with the WebSocket communication. Because WebSocket communication, that doesn't have the session information, and it doesn't go through the filters, so you're pretty much ruined with filter-based security there. But you can use Spring security kind of manually as well, so you can assign the credentials yourself and then just use those in your Vaadin application kind of bit more manually, but then you have much more control over what's actually happening here. And I will add links to these articles as well. Yeah, it's all explained here, and you should be good to go with these setups. And there is actually in this Vaadin for Spring project, which was actually the source for the add-on about events, like the UI level events and view-based events. Here is actually one. I think there is like examples here, and here is actually one couple of security examples as well. Good. And there is actually a lot more other kind of add-ons that you can or cannot use, whatever if you want to take these. We are using these in our production applications as well, but there is always so he always doesn't want to call all this stable, but he's using it himself anyway, so it's pretty good stuff actually. There is internationalization, and there is, if you want to use MVTP pattern in your Vaadin UI code, then you can.
Anyway, it's open source, so if there is a problem,
you can
someone can fix it.
All right. the next question, yes, it was about using Vaadin Designer.
Right.
So there is actually now you could actually install Vaadin Designer as well because because you have IntelliJ there and we have a beta version of that out.
Good.
So now it's also for other but only Eclipse users as well. But yeah, so how you can use that with Spring Boot or Spring-based Vaadin applications? Well, the answer is you can use it. There is one limitation because when you if you use like nested designs, so if you draw one UI and use that inside another design, then Vaadin actually it's not actually Vaadin Designer, but it's the Vaadin core which is using new keyword actually to instantiate this new object.
That's not going to work.
Yeah,
well.
but there is actually one workaround for that, and I think I don't have it open at the moment. I don't remember to take that example out.
We can send the link after anyway.
So there is like a small hack that you can do to kind of customize the way how Vaadin actually instantiates these objects, and then you can use that and then request the new bean from the Spring context and put that in place of this, what Vaadin would otherwise do with the new keyword. And that's pretty much it. Should work pretty well together. And next question. Then Brendan and a couple of other were asking about this connecting to traditional database systems. Well, that's pretty much we did for the most of the time in this webinar, so let's not waste that much time on there. But yes, we were actually using Spring Data JPA there, but you can also use like raw SQL.
Yeah, or you can also connect to NoSQL database if you want. So you can connect to Couchbase, Redis, Neo4j.
Yeah. And
plenty of options.
Yeah, and no need to use only JPA. You can use
you can use
Yogu as well and QR Diesel and
definitely.
And also there was a question about server support. So
anything that has a GDBC driver would work.
Yeah, and which Hibernate will.
If you want to use Hibernate, yes, Hibernate needs to support it, but that's on. You should ask them, not us.
Yeah. So yes, that's. A lot of applications are still using relational databases, and most of the a lot of Spring stuff is kind of all for the database communication. And then there was 2 times question asked about using Vaadin's navigator and views. So kind of how to build a good navigation system for your larger Vaadin application where you have multiple views and different. Probably some parameters. Yeah, and this is actually where
we're working on it, right?
Yeah, we are working on improvements. It's possible today, and but you have to do quite a lot of like manual configuration to do this kind of a Spring-powered navigator and the view provider that you need to do. But in Vaadin Spring 1.1, which will hopefully be actually out pretty soon. That will support kind of automatic configuration of these views so that they will be automatically registered to the navigator. And there is also actually a couple of annotations how you can actually declare.
So it's detected automatically.
So you can actually just use one annotation in your UI code to mark that, okay, this is the actual layout where you want your views to be placed. So you can make the main layout pretty easily and then just put the views here and that's it. And that should be out within 1 month, so it's kind of time boxed. So we also hope to kind of get some nasty bugs fixed. There was a couple of bugs that were reported by our pro account users, also so they can actually affect our priority line a bit, and we hope to kind of nail those in the 1.1 release as well.
So the Spring Boot integration for Vaadin, it's also on GitHub. So
So we actually just 2 weeks ago, I think, we moved to GitHub-based,
for issues and
so you can add issues now to the GitHub. You don't need to go to the old dev.vaadin.com site, but you can add it to GitHub. And if you want to just fix it yourself and get forward and donate that code to us, then you can do a pull request and our guys will.
So github.com/vaadin/spring, and you'll find the code there.
Yeah. We have like 1 minute time, so I think we could actually start to
wrap up.
Yes. So, what did we learn today?
Well, we learned that if you want to use Spring Boot with Vaadin, there is an excellent integration. We make sure that the two products work very well together.
I at least learned quite a lot about these dev tools. That's probably something that I will be enabling in my each and every Spring application.
Give it a try.
If
you're using Spring Boot, give it a try.
Yeah, it's super efficient. And especially if you have Hibernate in use, then it's gonna really like takes down the time that you need to restart your server. And also the live reload plugin. That's
the live reload plugin change, yes, because you don't have to do those steps anymore. It's done for you automatically.
It's only just one shortcut, but still, it looks better.
Less is good.
Yeah, then I can code without my hands, like you. And this was actually a very nice tip for at least one of my hobby applications. This thing with not Liquibase, but with this other tool, Flyway. Yeah. So.
And the code will be on GitHub in like 2 minutes. There are a few things that we haven't pushed yet, and we will send the link.
Yeah. So we will put the links in, let's say, within next half an hour to the forum page, and you can start hacking on the stuff that we have been presenting here today. Okay. So that's about it. It was very nice to have you here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's do it with some other topic next time, and see you. Bye-bye.
Have fun with Spring and Vaadin.